classes, man, those young people, they want to learn. They're hungry for God's word. They want to get out there and get into their missions and their churches, planting churches. They really get after it down there. One of the guys Daryl works with was my youth pastor when I was young, and passionate guy, loves God. And so they're doing a great work. So keep them in prayer, and if you feel led to give, give. If you want to turn in your Bible, Nehemiah chapter 4, we're going Old Testament, Nehemiah chapter 4. Funny name tag thing today. Have you ever named your cars? I wasn't proud of this one. We have two cars. One of them's named Dwayne Bob, and the kids named it, and the other one's named Segundo Bob. So a little Spanish for Daryl there. It's our second car, Segundo Bob. Anyway, I thought that was a funny one. So hey, we're going to talk about building strength here this morning for our message out of Nehemiah chapter 4, building and growing in strength. As you know, we're in the middle of our series where we show a film in the field on Wednesday and invite the whole community to watch this movie in their cars or bring blankets, and it's a great community event. And then we integrate a little bit of that movie into our sermon for the week. This week's was WALL-E. How many of you have seen the movie WALL-E? Actually, it was a really well-made, most of you have seen it, really well-made movie. The robot who works as a trash compactor. And Earth has been overrun with trash. So the humans have been living on a spaceship for 700 years, and WALL-E, this old, faithful robot, continues to work on Earth all by himself, compacting trash into cubes, and rebuilding the city and making these things with the cubes that he had compacted. He displayed great diligence as he continued to work and serve his purpose, even though no one was around watching. WALL-E in the movie met another robot and greatly appreciated that new friendship and that relationship, and they looked out for each other. And I was thinking, what passage does that remind me of? And then it hit me, Nehemiah, working in the rubble, right? Nehemiah rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. I'll give you a little bit of context. The nation of Israel had been split into two kingdoms. The northern kingdom, which fell to the Assyrian army and was taken captive in 722 BC. Shortly after that, the prophet Isaiah prophesied that King Cyrus, would release the people to go rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. You don't know what's remarkable about that? Is he gave that prophecy 150 years before Cyrus was even born. He named him by name in Isaiah 44, verse 28, said he will let them rebuild, the foundations will be laid. Isaiah 45 is all about Cyrus, and he hadn't even been born yet. Isn't God's word amazing? And in 586 BC, the southern kingdom was then conquered. That included Jerusalem. They were conquered by the Babylonians. And wouldn't you know it, in 538 BC, Cyrus rose to power and granted the right for the people to go rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, just like the prophet had foretold. And then in 444 BC, Nehemiah was the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes, and he had heard that the walls of Jerusalem, his hometown, his people, had been destroyed and set afire, and they were being raided and pillaged and plundered by their enemies. They were the laughingstock, and the people were afraid, and his heart was broken. And then he was granted permission by the king to get the resources to go rebuild the walls in Jerusalem, a huge mess. Earlier, the people rebuilt the temple, and now Nehemiah is going back to lead the act of rebuilding the walls. And in our lives, the rebuilding of the temple is a picture of our salvation. You know, rebuilding the place of worship. And in our hearts, many of us, if not all of us, I would hope, have come to that faith in Jesus. We've established that heart of worship. And now rebuilding the walls is a picture of growing in strength and building a defense of that faith, of that new heart of worship. We're going to read a good chunk of Scripture, so I would encourage you to follow along. If you didn't bring your Bible, we have some in front of you. Nehemiah chapter 4, I see most of you are already there, or maybe on your phones. We're going to start in verse 26 and read through verse 23. If you didn't, go ahead and just listen and kind of picture it in your mind as I read. Verse 6 of chapter 4. So we built the wall. The wall was joined together. It was halfway finished, for the people had a mind to work. But it came to pass when Sanballat, Tobiah, and the Arabians, the Ammonites, the Ashdodites heard that the walls were being built up and that the breaches began to be stopped, they were very angry, and they conspired all together to come against us and fight in Jerusalem to stop us. Verse 9. Nevertheless, we made our prayer unto God, and we set watchmen against them day and night because of them. And Judah said, their strength is decayed, and there is so much rubbish that we will not be able to build the wall. Have you ever felt like that in your life? You made some right decisions. You've started to really grab onto your faith, and you look around, and life is just a mess. There's just a mess. They look around and say, how are we even going to keep building? There's just piles of rubble everywhere, and they felt overwhelmed. I think even though we're not literally rebuilding walls, we can identify with that sense of, I don't even know where to start. There's just so much going on. Continuing on in verse 11. And our adversary said, they shall not know, neither shall they see, till we get into the midst of them and slay them and cause their work to cease. And it came to pass that when the people which dwelt by them, they said to us 10 times, from all places that you go, we will attack you. So they're under direct threats now too. Verse 13. Therefore, I set guards in the lower places behind the wall and in the higher places. I even set people according to their families, with swords, with spears, with bows. And I looked and rose up, and I said to the nobles, to the rulers, and the rest of the people, do not be afraid because of them. Remember the Lord, which is great and awesome. And fight for your brothers, fight for your sons, fight for your daughters, your wives, and your homes. So he put them according to their families, so they could fight for one another. Verse 15. And it came to pass, when our enemies heard that it was known unto us, and that God had brought their plans to nothing, that we returned, each one of us to the wall and to our work. And it came to pass in that time, that I had half of my servants working, and the other half holding spears, shields, and bows. And the rulers were behind all the house of Judah. They which built the wall, and those which protected those who were building the wall. Everyone worked with his own hands, and each one worked. And with the other hand, they held a weapon. Verse 18. Can you picture that? I mean, they got half the people working, half the people guarding. Even the people working had a sword or had a bow. They had one hand basically working, the other hand ready for an attack. I mean, what a picture Nehemiah has painted. What an event. What would it have been like to have been there rebuilding your walls? It's a good picture of how we're rebuilding and guarding and growing in our faith as we keep building, keep growing, yet we need to be on guard against the enemy. Verse 18. For the builders, each one had a sword at his side, so we built. And he that sounded the trumpet was near me. And I said unto the nobles, the rulers, and all the people, the work is great and large. We are separated on the wall, far from one another. Whenever you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us at that point, and our God shall fight for us. So because they were spread out, he said, if you hear a trumpet, run to that point. There's a problem. We need to rally together. Verse 21, so we labored in the work, half held spears from the rising of the morning till the stars appeared. Likewise, the same time said I to the people, let everyone with his servant lodge or sleep within Jerusalem at the night to be our guard unto us, and we will work during the day. Verse 23, so neither I nor my brothers or servants or men at the guard which followed me, none of us took off our clothes except to wash them. So I see three principles displayed here. There's a whole lot you could do here, but three principles how they were able to rebuild those walls and protect the people, and how we can apply those principles to growing our heart, our soul, the defense of our faith for ourselves, but also to protect our family. Number one, live for purpose, not for comfort. That's a huge principle I see in this passage. Living for purpose, not for comfort. They had been relatively comfortable living in Persia in their captivity, but they had no future there. They had to take a risk, leaving what they knew in Persia to go back to Jerusalem, and only a small amount of people said, I'll go. Only a small percentage said, I will go help rebuild those walls. But they had to live for the purpose of God rather than for their own comforts. We actually have a video from the movie we watched about this principle, living for purpose rather than comfort. In the future, in the movie, humans have robots do everything for them, and they're insanely comfortable, but it leads to their own demise and weakness. Let's watch that video.
Driving range and get a few virtual balls into space.
No, we did that yesterday. I don't want to do that.
Well, then what do you want to do?
I don't know. Something.
Make the place scream.
Look, I'm tired.
If you can't pull the straw, you have to decide to be good.
Over here.
Channel, I can't hear you.
John.
So there you have a picture of living for comfort and where that leads. And, physically is one thing, but I'm talking emotionally and spiritually. If we live just to be comfortable, we're going to have this spiritual weakness about us. Stand for nothing, fall for anything. Have you heard that before? Let us be people who say, God, I want to live for your purpose. Living to rebuild would be venturing out into the unknown for them then. It would be a step of faith, but it would be building a future for themselves and their families and their descendants to come after them. This morning, I hope that some of you feel a move on your heart to leave your Persia. Maybe some habits or something from your old lifestyle that says, I need to leave that. It keeps me comfortable. I like having that around. However it applies to you, but say, I'm going to take a step of growth and maturity today. I'm going to move forward in the purpose of God for my life, and I'm willing to give up some of these comforts. God had a purpose for the people to rebuild this city, rebuild the walls to their old city. And God calls each one of us here today to rebuild the things that have been broken in our lives, broken in our hearts and in our families. Isaiah chapter 58, verse 11 and 12, I want to read for you. Just listen in. It's an extremely inspirational passage that the first time I read it, when I first really got serious about my walk with Jesus, it always stood out to me. Verse 11 of that chapter says, the Lord will always guide you. He will satisfy you in a sun-scorched land and strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins. You will restore age-old foundations. You will be called the repairers of the breach, restorers of the streets that you dwell in. Amen. Wow. I want that to be a description of my life. One who says, I'm a rebuilder. There's brokenness all around me, and I'm a part of the solution. I don't want to live for comfort. I want to live for purpose. We can be well-watered gardens, restorers of ancient ruins, repairer of old foundations. Your family may have been broken in generations past, but by the power of God, you can bring restoration where there had been brokenness for generations. And you can be called the repairer of the breach. I can look into my family lineage and say, that's the one on my father's side, that's the one on my mother's side, who changed the pattern of our family, who changed us for generations going forward by living for Jesus, living for purpose rather than comfort. The first half of their wall went up very quickly. It says in verse 6, because the people had a mind to work. They were there to get after it. They were there to build. They were there to do something with a purpose. They were fully committed. And we can see changes in our lives and in our families if we will step up and say, I am fully committed to this. Lord, I will follow you through and through. Jesus said in Luke 9:62, no one who puts their hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the service of the kingdom of God. He said, I want wholehearted commitment. 2 Timothy 2:15, be diligent to present yourself approved to God, a workman who does not need to be ashamed, accurately handling the word of truth. Someone who studies the word of God, not living for comfort, living for purpose. Have a mind to work, no half measures. Leave Persia, leave your past behind you, and give everything to Jesus. Trading your comforts for the purpose of God can start with this. It can start with getting up a little earlier to seek God in prayer, to seek Him by reading His Word, to seek Him in worship, right? That's a real practical way. That's a great place to start. If this message is stirring in your heart, you say, I think I want to do that. What do I literally do? I set the alarm clock a little earlier. Say, God, I could be comfortable a little longer, but I'm going to get up and learn something about you. I'm going to get up and spend some time in prayer. I'm going to start a prayer list and start praying through some things. I'm going to get up early just to give you worship and honor. That's a great place to start living for purpose rather than comfort. They faced criticisms. They faced threats. If a fox steps on the wall, they said in verses 1 through 4, it'll probably fall. And people may see you growing in your faith, especially if you're new to Christianity, you're new to this pursuit of Jesus, and they may say things like, you won't make it. This isn't for real. We know who you really are. Overcome those criticisms. The criticisms even turn to threats, conspiring against them, plans to sneak in and infiltrate and kill them from within. And as you grow, the opposition may grow as well. But I would encourage you, just keep on building. Don't let hardship, don't let criticism Even threats stop you from moving forward and growing in your faith. God wants to build you up into a strong wall. Verse 17, it says, they built with one hand, they defended with the other. They were working. They kept moving forward. Don't let anything stop you from your progress. You know, a caterpillar, what does it do to metamorphose size? You're the linguist guy. Daryl, I don't know how you say that word. To turn into a butterfly. It builds metamorphosis. Thank you. It builds a cocoon, right? Do you know that if you felt sorry for or you wanted to help that metamorphosis, that process, and you tried to maybe cut the cocoon a little bit to help the butterfly break free, you know you'd actually be setting the butterfly back? The struggle to break that cocoon open is what gives the butterfly's wings the strength it needs to fly. And there's this principle of God taking struggles, God taking criticisms, God even taking threats, God taking like a situation, building with one hand, defending with the other, to strengthen us in our hearts, in our soul, in our core, the very fiber of who we are, our being. Those struggles can be used to help us grow. Just like the butterfly's struggles give it the ability to fly. So don't live for comfort. Don't look for comfort. Live for the purpose of God. Living in the rubble. Remember we mentioned there's so much rubble, we don't know where to start. We don't know how to begin. They got part of the way and then they got to the hard part where it's just a massive mess. They felt overwhelmed. I know many of us can identify with feeling overwhelmed. What did they do? They just kept working, one brick at a time. And I've heard some people say to me, well, I want to be a Christian, I want to follow Jesus, but I got to clean some things up in my life first. Did these people clean up first, or did they just start working? They just dove right in. And that's a principle throughout the Bible. Hey, don't worry about your mess. Just bring it to the Lord and say, here I am, God. You don't feel like you have to clean up, change things. Just come to Jesus as you are, and then let him begin to rebuild your life from the inside out. But like them, just one brick at a time. If you feel this morning like you're in the rubble, it's just a mess and you're not sure where to start or what to do next, live one prayer at a time. One verse at a time. One choice at a time. One day at a time. Like one brick at a time. And as you string together these faithful days of one brick, one verse, one choice. This next choice, I'm going to make it to honor God. I'm going to have some time in prayer to connect with God. I'm going to study his word to learn more about God. One at a time, you'll see that pile of rubble get smaller and smaller. And we can hand the next generation a strong wall wherein they can thrive and they can grow. I was handed a strong wall, and I'm grateful to that. All my life I've been told, by my dad, hey, much is given, much is required, right? That you got to serve with what you have. I was given a strong wall. But I admire those of you here today, those of you listening online, that you're building a wall of faith and you were not handed a strong wall. You were handed a broken down, burnt down wall by the generation before you. But you're the repairer of the breach. Amen? You're the one that's going to build it up. So your children and your grandchildren can look to you and say, yeah, my uncle, my grandfather, my grandmother, my aunt, they were the one that turned the whole direction of this family. And I like at the end of verse 23, basically says Nehemiah never put on his pajamas. That would be like a modern day translation. Even at night, he kept his work clothes on because he was living for purpose and not for comfort. Second point, and points 2 and 3 are quite a bit shorter than point 1. So those of you that are looking like, yeah, my tummy's rumbling here a little bit, I got you covered. Don't worry. We're going to be all right. We're living for purpose, right? Not for comfort. Yeah, there we go. Number 2, fight for your families and don't fight alone. Verses 13 and 14, he set them with their families, swords and spears, remember? He set them to work together, and he said those inspirational words, fight for your sons, fight for your daughters, fight for your wives and your homes, right? He gave them that inspiration. We ought to be people, followers of Jesus, who say, I'm going to fight for my family. Think beyond ourselves. I fight the good fight for God. I fight the good fight for myself. But I fight the good fight for my family as well. My wife and my daughters, I know my nephews and nieces are watching. Their Uncle Matt, they want to see what I do. They want to see how I live. They want to hear how I speak, how I treat people, how I respond to things. Right? I want to carry that torch for them as well. And when you build what God desires you to build, you're not the only one to benefit from it. From that strength, that inner peace, that joy, that purpose. But your family also benefits as well. And if you run, they may have to face a battle without walls. They can overcome by the power of God, by the grace of God. I believe that. Do you believe that today? Yeah, God is going to do God's work, right? But if we can give them that wall, if we can give them that head start, let's do it. Be faithful to God. Your family will be stronger for it. Some quit because of criticism. Some quit because of fear or discouragements or stress. The pile's too big. Lack of hope. I give up. Stay faithful. Not only for yourself, but for your families. I heard a statement a long time ago, and it always stuck with me. You should fight for your family, not with them. Right? Oh my goodness. What a great idea. That just turned, hey, my family, they're not my enemy. No matter how much I feel like we may be at odds or there's this drama or that going on, they are not my enemy. I'm not going to fight with them. I'm going to fight for them. Amen? Remember that statement. That always stood with me. Don't fight alone, I mentioned. He said there's that trumpet system, right? When you hear the trumpet, everyone rally to that point. You may remember we read that. He also said, at night, we all sleep within the city. Many of them had homes outside of the city. They had lands outside of the city. They were checking things out for how they hadn't been there in years and years, maybe never been there from past generations. But he said at night, we all rally back together for security, for safety. Nehemiah had a system. If you're in trouble, let's sound a trumpet. Everyone who hears will rally to that point. I think that's still a good system today. If you're struggling with something, don't struggle alone. Sound a trumpet. Sound it here this morning. Come up and let us know, hey, I'm struggling with this. Here's what's going on in my family, in my heart, in my situation. Here's my addiction. Here's my problem. Don't fight alone. Fight for your family. Have that perspective and don't fight alone. Sound the trumpet and let the family of faith know, and we'll rally behind you. Ecclesiastes 4:12, 1 may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves, but 3 make a threefold cord which is not easily broken. Hebrews 10:25 says, don't forsake gathering together. Galatians 6:2, carry one another's burdens. Sound the trumpet if you have a need. And then conversely, if you hear a trumpet, rally to that need. Don't ignore someone calling for help. Get involved. Rally to the call. Help somebody who's in need. Nehemiah also had that rule, no one sleeps outside of the city. No one gets too far out. Many of them had those homes, they had places they wanted to check out or had to go out for resources. But there were reasons to leave the city. But the mission was to rebuild the walls. And the threat was the greatest outside of the city, alone at night. Let us take a point from that. Let us keep good accountability. Don't allow yourself to drift far from your people or drift from your purpose. We're most vulnerable when we're out of that close relationship. I would encourage you, don't miss much time at church. This is the main point in our culture where we rally together to be together for accountability, encouragement, prayer, ministry. I would encourage you, don't be gone for long. Don't allow yourself to be isolated outside of accountability. We all leave here this afternoon, and I hope we all go out and live by faith. But let us be back here again soon to worship together and rally together. Amen? Amen. Amen. And he said, don't be afraid of them in verse 14. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome. Don't allow your hearts to fear. Remember the faithfulness of God. And lastly, pray first, act second. So when all of this was going on, threats, criticism, stress, rubble, verse 9 is a pivoting point in that passage. He says, nevertheless, we made our prayer unto God. What was his first reaction? We got to pray. Right? It wasn't, we got to run here, you got to go there, we got to do this, we got to do that. Oh, what are we going to do? They're going to attack us here. They're trying to infiltrate us from the outside in and slay us. Listen to all these threats over and over again. What are we going to know? Nevertheless, we made our prayer unto God. Next time you feel that avalanche coming, stop and remember this phrase. Nevertheless, meaning in spite of all these things, I am hitting stop and I'm going to the Lord in prayer. First response. Prayer should be our first response, not our last resort. Pray without ceasing, the Bible says, 1 Thessalonians 5:16. Don't let anything stop you from prayer. Discouragement, doubt, lack of faith, don't let them stop you from prayer. Never quit on God. Under stress, the first thing they did was pray. They set watchmen next. So he came up with a plan. He was going to be responsible to do whatever he knew to do. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They stayed faithful to their calling. Let us do the same. They didn't seek out trouble, did they? I like that. They didn't say, let's go fight these guys. Let's go take care of this. Let's show them what we're capable of, right? They didn't go out and seek trouble. They didn't go out and pick a fight. But at the same time, they were ready if the fight was brought to them. I love that principle here. The temptation might have been, hey, let's go get these guys while they sleep, right? If we're going to fight, let's do it on our terms. Let's go. They didn't seek out trouble. I think we could use that in our marriages. I think we could use that in our relationship with our kids. Some of our in-laws and things that are going on in our lives, in our workplaces, say, I'm going to keep building. I'm going to keep growing. I'm going to keep seeking God. I'm not going to let anything stop me from progressing in my faith, and I'm not going to look for any trouble. They had every reason to go looking for trouble. And they said, we're just going to keep faithfully building. And you know what? The trouble never actually came, did it? They never worked that. They just stayed faithful and diligent. They prayed, and they had a plan. So if you're up against something, remember that principle as well. And you may say, how can I be ready to face trouble? How can I? We always want to give you practical advice from the Bible, not just big general ideas. Here are some ways we can be ready to face trouble. Have people of God in your corner. Be accountable. Sound that trumpet, right? Say, yeah, I have this situation. It may come about, it may not. But I want you to be praying for me. Do you have any advice? Maybe from pastors or from people you respect in the family of faith. Have a godly course of action plan. Have spent time in prayer about that situation. Pray. Let people know what's going on. Have that accountability. Also say, what does the Word of God say about this? And you know what? As you talk to people, your pastors, your friends about it, say, can you pray for me about this? As you seek God's Word about it, as you pray and that's for that situation and for those people, you know what? I think God is going to change your heart. And God's going to change my heart. And that desire to get back, that desire to prove yourself right, will turn into a compassion for that situation or compassion for those people. Just a few practical words of advice. Verse 15, and it came to pass when our enemies heard that it was made known unto us that God had brought their plans to nothing, they all returned to their work. I love that phrase. God had turned all their plans to nothing. After all that hype, after all that drama, after all that stress and trash talk, what did it amount to? Nothing. Good thing they didn't stop working, right? It all came to nothing. More times than not. There's even statistics as to what people worry about and how often it comes about to pass. And it was like less than 4% of the time does the thing that you're worried about actually happen, right? So let our worries and our concerns and our stress stop us, not stop us from our growth. If we could have the worship team come forward, we'll begin to close. Let God deal with those outside distractions and threats. Let God deal with it. What should we do? Just keep growing. Just keep building the wall. One brick at a time. People are critical. There's threats. You got worry, anxiety. You got stress about things. Hey, God, nevertheless, I'm making my prayer. And I'm going to keep building. You deal with the rest. Right? I'll have a plan. I'll be responsible. But Lord, I'm placing it all in your hands. My dad told me a long time ago, involving things like this, he said, don't kick the goats, feed the sheep. I think that's a great picture and a great way to live. I'm not going to go kicking the goats who are causing trouble. I'm not going to go fighting back and trying to get even. I'm just going to, whoever the sheep are, I'm going to keep feeding them, right? Just keep on building. This morning, live for purpose, not for comfort. Maybe that spoke to you. Maybe there's some things in your life you say, I got to move forward from that measure of comfort in order to serve the purpose of God. I don't know what it is. Just let the Spirit of God move on your heart. We can all look at this next one. Fight for your families. Don't fight alone. In a minute, when I ask you to stand here in a moment, if you'd like to come forward and fight for your family this morning, we'll give the altar call this morning. Come forward and pray if you have someone in your family who's struggling. If you want someone to pray with you, I encourage you to stand off to your right, my left. If you just want to pray on your own, kind of sit up in these front seats or kneel at the altar or stand somewhere else. But we can fight for our families right here today. We can get started now. Just come into the Lord in prayer. And lastly, let us always be prayer first, action second. Let's stand to our feet as we close. If you'd like to come forward and pray for your family in general or someone specifically in your family, come forward. If you're over here standing, we'll take that as a note that you want to be prayed with. If you're anywhere else, we'll leave you alone just to pray you and the Lord. We'll close in a few moments, but let's respond as it's on our hearts to respond. Come forward if you'd like to pray for your families. Praise
what your desire is for us, God. Help us to rise up to what you've called us to be and who you've called us to be, God. God, that we can stand with those that are going, Father. God, that we can rally with them, that we can be a support and encouragement to them, Jesus. God, I thank you for community that you've given to us, God. Help us to live in that community. God, to be vulnerable, to share our hurts, to share our places where we have help, we need help, God. Then to offer help and to offer hope to those that are around us, God. God, we are so thankful that we can come to you first. We can lay our hearts before you, Father, that you care for every one of our needs, that you're walking with us, that you're a strength to us, Jesus. God, help us to continue to come to you. Help us to reach out to you. God, we do thank you for the institution that you've given to us as a family, Father. God, for our spouses, how you made us one. God, help us to fight for them. Help us to see them as our team player, Father. God, as the person you put in our life to be a strength to us, God. God, for our children, Father, and fight for them. They'll feel the love that we have for them, God. They won't only hear our criticism. They won't only hear what our disappointments are, God, but they'll hear that we fight for them. That you have a plan for them, God. Help us to be the parents that you called us to be, Father. God, that students will see their parents as fighting for them. That they'll receive what their parents, what you put their parents in their lives for them before, God. God, that we can live this principle out, God. That we can fight for each other, God. That you want to give us strength. Jesus, go with us this week. Everything we encounter, God, that you be forefront in our minds. God, that we honor you, that we choose to live our lives, Father, bringing glory and honor to you. God, that we thank you for the strength that you've made available to us. Help us to go in it, God, to live in it. Thank you, Jesus, for your strength. Do this now, Father. Jesus. Well, you're welcome to you're dismissed today. If you want prayer, I invite you to come and still reach out to God, seek for him in your life to meet your needs. Daryl and Leah will be in the foyer. Be an encouragement, blessing to them. Feed his people this week. Okay? God bless you today.
You